Well, greetings. My name is Jason Hotchkiss. I am a psychologist and researcher. I work in hospice and elder care, and I happen to have a background in technology before all this. So I just wanted to thank John Snow Labs for the opportunity to present on use of natural language processing in online caregiver reviews. So that's what I'll be presenting about today. And so I'll just begin with, why did I do this? I worked in hospice for many years, for about 10 years, and the quality has been variable. And one of the things that's happened and is happening in wider healthcare is the rapid growth of for-profit hospice and those services. The danger is that's having an effect on the quality of the services. And so wanting to look at how we can lift up quality. It's on the radar for the hospice industry in 2024. Well, there are standardized metrics, that is true. But one of the limitations is that only 1/3 of hospices are rated nationally. And then small hospices are often missed. And also, just on the far right, the limitations of the current method is that it's using these ancient methods of mail and phone, which does great for eliminating outside influence, as you security people would know, but on the downside, it's missing a lot of people, especially young people. They don't get to have a voice. So what happens? They go online to post. And so it's another source of quality information that needs to be included. Well, just a quick overview of the methods. As you can see, sentiment analysis is a part of a larger set of natural language processing. And here, what I've been using sentiment analysis is to extract the topics and subtopics and really get a feel for the user experience of a person who has been a caregiver on hospice. It's important to note that caregivers rate the hospice experience because as a dead person, you're not going to be able to do that. And so it's very important that hospices pay attention to what their caregivers have to say. So in sum, we're able to assess the user experience of enrollees. And this led to sort of uncovering some unseen issues. So with open-ended reviews, you get something that you don't get from a standardized survey. These things are kind of clear. I won't spend a lot of time here, but just rich contextual information, individualized experiences, expectations, all of that comes out here. So hospice consumer experience is facilitated by having sort of both methods. You think about anything when we do studies, if we can take parallel methods, we can sort of converge in on something that would be more valuable than either source. And so this is happening a lot today in research. That helped us to get really sense about the topics, and then we're able to sort of guide the sentiment process. So it wasn't one of those sort of unguided process. We had to guide the process in order to know what people are saying. We did use Google NLP in this process. Just a quick bit on the data collection. We went after the 50 largest primarily as we started looking at what reviews were available. Tiny hospices don't have as many. We wanted the reviews to be representative, and so CAPS, the government, requires 30 reviews to even publish a score, which makes sense. And we followed the same guideline that we would allow. We didn't want to have a hospice report on a tiny, subset, a tiny sample size. So then this was done through Python. I am not necessarily a coder. I did a little bit of coding and scripting when I was in IT. I was a network engineer. But I was able to write in Python the code to do this, and it took a lot of writing and rewriting, but and it really was able to process all the data and then and then do the sentiment analysis. Another note I should mention is that in our quality process, we focused on caregiver reviews. In another process, I looked at reviews from employees. Well, what about the process of data quality? So, we started with human coding, as I mentioned. The inclusion criteria, we wanted to make sure we had 30 at least reviews for the 50 hospices. We had to go down to 51 and 52 because 2 hospices just didn't have enough reviews. Now, it's important to note for quality too. Google, Yelp, Facebook, they are using artificial intelligence to, like, let's remove like garbage reviews. There's certainly ways of getting that right through AI. And so they also note that the small portion, I experienced this, we did, that are coming from like personnel. And that's okay. Just set those aside and analyze them later. So it was sentiment analysis, ranges from -1 to +1. And that it's interesting that it's that high of a range. But practically what I noticed is the max scores that we were getting for things tended to be in the 0.7 range. It's almost similar to, stats when you look at like reliability. You get, that's the highest we get. Nobody gets a 1 in the sentiment analysis, So the sentiment analysis is really key to be able to capture the feeling. This is the game changer with this. In my area, feeling is so important, but yet it's so hard to get at, and this gives us an avenue to it. So we did topical modeling. We looked at, what were the main topics coming out, and then tried to group under that. And I did take a perspective of looking for the CAPS themes, and so that guided things as well. Here's some just an overall quick look at the results. We use natural language processing, as I said. If you look over on the right side, you'll notice that this is sort of a conceptual flow. When you look at the experience, I was trying to model that conceptually. And so the top are really 2 CAPS scores, getting timely help and communication with the family. And I'm just going to kind of review just these 2 to explore the ideas. So notice getting timely help, the sentiment score is 0.20. Now, in our situation, just below 0.25 would be considered neutral range. That's the way we rated it. And so people nationally, as overall, people are saying, you're getting timely help is not the best sometimes. Communication with the family was just below the 0 level. And that's the range where we categorize as negative experience. And so you can see these are big issues. And so the results are bringing out the service issues within the hospice industry. And then you can see there's all the other different things, and I won't go through each detail. What I'm trying to draw out is the tools, how I use the NLP tools, and I will make some conclusions about what we learned for the hospice industry as well. Well, this is the model that I built. So if you look in the middle, I wanted to make sure that this was grounded in theory. And so as a psychologist and chaplain, I really looked to Watson's curative factors, which is an industry standard in healthcare. And what was so good about this is to be able to find the holistic perspective. So you'll notice, like, for instance, allowance for the existential I can't even say the word right, phenomenological sources. And so this is kind of my sweet spot. And so when I find this, I'm like, good. They're acknowledging all the aspects of healthcare, that when you're in the hospital, whatever values we have, whether you're Catholic, Buddhist, Protestant, or, these things in hospice, you need to draw on your faith. That's important to give you strength. And so that's sort of the middle. And in coming up with the review themes, what we really did was we looked for the CAPS indicators and the curative topics in the themes and sort of drew them out that way. And so on the left is sort of the qualitative experience of hospice, going down there. The interesting finding was that care quality was just so huge. And of course, care quality attached to people. People were most often mentioned. Well, I'd like to give what I call sort of, you have like, I think in situations, you have your red lights and your green lights. This is the green light hospice. It's the nonprofit caregiver experience. And what I'm trying to highlight here, communicating feeling is so hard in a presentation like this because of the emotion of it is hard to bring out that way. And so what I did is I used colors to represent. I figured that frustrating would be associated with that angry emoji, you know, and you'll notice here, none of that appears in the nonprofit caregiver experience, and then that experience applied to a hospice. So this is how I was able to apply the method and do a rating of 50 hospices. It was very helpful. And so these tools, I just give thanks to the people who have been developing them through the years, because they give us answer questions that we have not been able to answer until now. Okay, well, what about the red flag experience? Well, you know, what I tried to do here is really look at the same categories, and what comes up for caregivers is people showing up for them. Such a basic thing, right? People showing up for others, and, you know, making sure that they're there and in the middle of all that's being done. And so, and you'll notice here on the 6th one down, there's one real red flag that came up, and so the expected more family support was quite this blaring finding. It was like, you know, you hear a review that's, I put my hand up to the phone, but you hear a review that says something to the effect, you know, we really understood hospice to support the family, and you guys kind of told us that up front, and yet in the end, it was really a red flag experience. And so we are learning that, yes, there is a good experience, and this has been my writings. Tell all the good of hospice, but point out some of the downsides too. And when you apply this to, here's one of the worst hospices in my review, just, it's the largest. It wouldn't be a surprise to find out that the worst care happens to the largest hospice. There's a quantity hospice model. Let's just get them in, get them out. And caregivers said, we want to be valued. Well, what are some of the things that we took from this? I thought I would reflect a little bit on, for this audience, about how NLP has been valuable, and how, you know, we used it in this process. And I will make some comments about the caregiver experience as well, but have to be quick here. Well, first of all, one of the things I learned with it, a first learning, is that Google, we use Google NLP. There's also TextBlot, which is a more of a free service. To use Google NLP, you need to register with Google Cloud to set things up. And so what I noticed was sentiment analysis was more accurate with Google NLP. And that meant I had to have an account. But yet TextBlot and Google did really come together. They did converge on emotional intensity and prevalence. The scores were quite close in that area, within 3%. Well, what's another learning? Second learning. Well, one of the things that I learned, we of course pulled in the star ratings, but in trying to get at a negative topic like lack of staffing, which is kind of one of the most common issues, is I had to really look at the negative reviews, and to be able to balance that so that I'm not in the sentiment pulling a lack of staffing where someone just mentioned staffing. You know what I mean? So if you get the sentiment wrong, then you might say that they like the staffing. Is sort of a false positive. So what we did was we really tried to use the rating to separate things out, so that I only looked for it in that topic. So this analysis made such that negative staffing, less support, offered money, they were more accurate then. So, well, another learning from this whole process is normalizing the magnitude. So magnitude is really emotional intensity. Magnitude is the technical language that sentiment analysis used, but I think the better descriptive terms is emotional intensity, but not directionally. It's just like, this is how intense the feeling was. You know, when someone writes a 10-page long review about their bad experience, that's going to drive that up. So we just let it flow. We let the raw score, it told us more than normalizing it. So that's one I wanted to share there. You know, some experiences in hospice are unachievable. We were able to detect about 10% of reviews where people, there's a there are patterns of topics being raised that are out of scope of what hospice offers. So for instance, having someone sit with their loved one for hours on a time so that they could go for a spa day. Like, there are ways of getting respite, but like expectations sometimes can cause people to rate hospice poorly when they didn't really understand it. Another learning just about the psychometrics of all this is that CAP scores do, interestingly, seem to be dealing with ceiling effects. And you can see here in this very narrow distribution, these are CAP scores for around the country. And so it's, you know, the whole idea of a test is that it should discriminate. There should be highs, there should be a lot of people in the middle, there should be lows. And what the CAPS process is doing is really not capturing that element of it. So what you get from online reviews is more of a holistic picture. And so you're including the non, you know, the non-white folks, the minorities that tend to sometimes have more poor experiences. Sometimes that is a factor. Well, what are some of my conclusions? Well, caregivers just prefer nonprofit hospices. That's for sure. They got angry at large for-profits. There was conceptual agreement between, you know, the CAP scores and open-ended reviews. There's a lot of, you know, convergence on that. And we were able to develop a model that included all 10 of Watson's factors, all 8 of the CAP scores, and consolidated with the review themes. So hospice caregivers were most likely to recommend hospices with what? Just caring staff, overall care, responsive to requests, offering family support, including bereavement care. So these are some of the things that I learned from the process. I'm now open to taking any questions or comments.
This was the last presentation today, and I'd like to thank all the speakers for their excellent talks covering state-of-the-art NLP and LLM applications in healthcare and in life science. Today's session highlighted the following takeaways: the healthcare GPT model benchmarks, the transformative impact of generative AI in drug discovery, advancement in diagnostic medical reasoning using LLM and AI systems, strategies for leveraging healthcare NLP in medical centers, and discussions of how we all as a community can work together towards responsible AI with the Coalition for Health AI. These discussions collectively offer very valuable perspective on enhancing healthcare outcomes through AI innovation. I would also like to say a big thank you to all of you, to this amazing community, to each one of you personally for joining and contributing with your own experience. See you tomorrow.